All right, Chris, the floor is yours.
Well, we are joined by Chuck Christian, and he played for the University of Michigan football. Was it 1977 to 1980? Is that correct?
1977 through the 1981 Rose.
Oh, okay. So through 1981. So you were part of the
No,
Rose
no,
Bowl team?
yeah, that was it because the
Okay.
80 season is 81 Rose Bowl.
Got it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nope. That makes sense. And yeah, I mean, given, everything that is sort of, taking place in Michigan football news right now, like we had mentioned offline a little bit, you and I had sort of connected a couple years back for a different reason. And,
oh yeah,
as soon as all of this came up, I thought it would be just a great opportunity for you to come on and sort of share your experience and hopefully, educate some people that I think they approach these situations. They're a little bit confused about how everything went down and why certain things happen. And I know you're a big advocate about trying to right some wrongs and sort of
right.
inform people on that. So I guess we can start right from the beginning. I'll give you the floor, and I mean, I guess start from when you got to the University of Michigan and kind of what your experience was and how that led to your interactions with the former doctor.
Okay, well, for me, before I got to Michigan, I was being recruited by schools all over the country, and I ended up choosing Michigan because the coach came out and he told my mom that first of all that Michigan was the leaders and best, and Michigan was the best in everything, and he just really hyped up Michigan so much. So he's like, you don't want to go to Michigan State, you don't want to go to Ohio State, you don't want to go to Notre Dame. Michigan is the place to be, and we were going to take good care of you as an athlete, and that we had the best medical program in the country, and that and I wasn't used to that because growing up, we didn't have good medical insurance or anything, so that was tough. But when I got to Michigan, he said, well, you're going to have the best of everything. You're going to you're going to go to the Rose Bowl. You were going to get the best education that you could possibly get by coming to Michigan. And my mom loved what they said, and she said, Chuck, I really want you to go to Michigan because they're going to both the coaches are saying that they're really going to take good care of you. So I said, okay, well, I'll go. And plus, I was close enough to where my mom could drive up to see me every every home game. So I said, yeah, let's do it. So that's how I ended up coming to Michigan. Um, and in high school I played basketball and football, and I was all star in both sports. And in fact, I played against Magic in high school, and we beat them.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
Very
pretty.
impressive.
I, I saw Magic for Thanksgiving, and I told him that. I said, Magic, you remember this date? And then I cited it all to him. He said, you on that team? I said, okay.
That's something you don't forget.
Right, exactly, exactly.
So then you obviously, you commit to Michigan, you get to campus, and somehow or another, I mean, what I guess what was the reason why you first had to pay a visit to the doctor?
But the first thing, before we could start hitting or anything, we had to get our physicals. And Dr. Anderson, the trainer, gave me Dr. Anderson's information and told me to go meet him at this building and get my physical. I said okay. So I went, and it started off pretty much like any other physical. He checked my joints, my knees, all this stuff, and then he said, "Okay, bend over." I'm like, "Wait a minute, what's that for?" And then I saw him in the corner snapping a glove on his hand, and then he lubricated it. I'm like, he's like, I got to check you. This is a thorough physical. I'm like, dang, nobody told me about this. And then he put his finger up my butt, and I screamed like a baby. It was like that thing hurt so bad. Plus, he was fat too. He had big hands, and he put him, and I just started screaming. And he said, "You feel pressure, don't you?" I said, "No, I feel pain. I know the difference between pain and pressure." And then he did that, and he fondled me for a while, and I'm thinking, man, I never had a physical like that before. So when I came out of the office with him, there was another freshman sitting there in the lobby. Seemed like he was just sitting there, just trying to, gather himself because he had gone in just before me. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, "Did Dr. Anderson put his finger in your butt?" He said, "Yeah." I feel violated. I said, "Yeah, man, that was painful." And I said, "I've never had that done before." He said, "Me either." So then when we got back to the football building where the other players were for practice, I started talking to some of the freshmen. First of all, they said, "Yeah, he did me too." I'm like, "Okay, let me talk to some upperclassmen to make sure this is legit." So I talked to some upperclassmen, some juniors and seniors, and they said, "Oh yeah, he's going to do that to you for 4 years." I'm like, "Wow." So I guess, we're in the big leagues now, and this is the way physicals are done because, I came from an inner city school in Detroit. So I didn't know what a physical was until I got to Michigan. So I said, I guess this is the way physicals are done all over the country. Because if it's done at Michigan, and I know Michigan's the leader and best, and I know Michigan does everything right, so this must be a legitimate way of doing a physical. But I just never, I didn't expect this, and that's how I first had my first run in with Anderson.
Okay, and from what we're hearing from everything that comes out, it seems like the issue with Dr. Anderson was quote unquote the worst kept secret on campus. That even the two former players who spoke today had said if you walk through a Michigan locker room, you would hear the jokes, or you would hear assistant coaches sort of in jest making a threat that if you didn't run fast enough or you didn't complete a drill good enough, that they were going to send you to the doctor. In your experience, did you experience any of that? I mean,
Oh yeah.
before you went to the doctor, had you heard those things around campus?
No, not until afterwards,
Okay.
because see, to get the physical came first, and then once the practices start, that's when the jokes started. And it wasn't just the coaches; it was the coaches, the trainers, the it was just mostly the coaches and trainers that were doing that. And but it was just a running joke in there, and I heard that if you hurt your toe and you go see Anderson for your toe, that he was going to put his finger in your butt for whatever reason, and the coaches and trainers knew this. They knew that he was going to do that, but for some reason that was okay, and they never told us that it was inappropriate. They never told us that he shouldn't be doing that. They just, it was just normal. In fact, some of the coaches had it done to them when they were players.
Got it. So once you were, on the practice field and obviously working with your teammates, that's when the running joke sort of became more obvious, and I guess the scope of how widely known this was became apparent to you. I know your situation is a little bit unique in that maybe while it was happening you knew something wasn't right, but like you said, you thought that this was just the way things were done, at that level. At what point did you realize that this wasn't a normal exam and that what had happened to you was beyond, what should have happened?
A year ago is when I discovered it. One of my teammates called me. I was in the hospital. I was about to die of cancer, and I was in the hospital bed, and my one of my teammates called me and he said, "Chuck, do you remember those? You remember Dr. Anderson?" I said, "Yeah. How can you forget him?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You know those physicals he used to give us?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "They were illegal." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah. The physicals that he was doing to us were illegal. He was not supposed to be penetrating us." And that's how I found out. And then it's like, oh crap. And then stuff started coming back to me, and it's like, that's why I wouldn't go see a doctor, because I came down with prostate cancer a little over 5 years ago. And when I discovered I had prostate cancer, my doctor was like, "Why didn't you come in sooner? Why didn't you come in sooner?" And my doctors were trying to get me to come in sooner, but I wouldn't go, and I never could figure out why I wouldn't go. And my wife was always trying to get me to go, and I wouldn't go to get the exam because When I was 45, I went in and because I was having trouble with 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 blood in my urine, and I went to see a urologist, and he said, "Well, I got to do a digital exam on you." And a digital exam sounds like a high tech exam, on a screen on a scan. I didn't know he meant a finger. And then he said, "I said, okay, fine, you can do a digital exam." And then he went over into the corner and snapped on a glove. And I said, "Oh no, oh no, this is the same thing Anderson did to me. I will never let anybody do that to me again." And my wife said, "Chuck, stick around, stick around." I said, "No, I'm leaving. I'm leaving now." And then I wouldn't sit back down. And the doctor was like, "Have a seat, Chuck. I'm just going to tell you what's involved." I said, "I know what's involved. I'm out of here." And now, if I had gotten the exam done at that point, they could have discovered the prostate cancer sooner, and they wouldn't have been giving me a death sentence. But they didn't. But I didn't stick around. I left, and then 5 years ago, I went in to see my wife. I was getting up 8 to 10 times a night to go to the bathroom, and my wife said, "Chuck, that's not normal to get up 8 to 10 times a night to go to the bathroom." I said, "Well, it's normal to me. I've been doing it for a while now." She's like, "You need to go to see the doctor." And then she told me that this is not something you can play with. This is life and death now. I was like, oh. So she got my undivided attention. So I went in to see the doctor, and they did the scans, and they did the finger at the butt, and then they did some other tests, and then they discovered that I had prostate cancer. And on a Gleason scale from 1 to 10, I had a 9.5, which is as bad as it can get. And they said, "Well, it's too bad to operate right now. So what we're going to have to do is, you only have a matter of a few years to live." I'm like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, you only have a few years to live for this because it already metastasized into my spine and shoulders and tailbone and ribs and my hips." So that's when I discovered that they were giving me a death sentence of 3 years.
How, as a side note, how is your health today? I mean, I know that this was now a few years ago that you discovered this. I mean, how are things today?
Well, it's been 5 years now.
Okay.
I've been getting different types of treatments, alternative treatments, some energy work. I've done some other alternative treatments as well. And I didn't do what my doctors wanted me to do. They wanted me to do chemo and radiation. But I decided that I didn't want to do chemo and radiation because I did one dose of chemo and it just really messed me up. Because when I was 50, to show you how bad things were, when I was 57 years old, I was I was still playing basketball. So I was playing in the 18 and over basketball league. And I was the oldest guy in the league by 20 years and by 22 years. And I was the most valuable player. I averaged 35 points a game and won the championship. And then I did one dose of chemo, and I was sitting on my front porch just trembling like this, and I couldn't move, and I was drooling, and to describe it, I felt like after the chemo, I felt like I was naked, wrapped up in saran wrap, placed on my back in a sauna, and then put a gorilla on my chest. I could not breathe. I couldn't do anything. And I told my wife, I don't know if I'm going to make it because I was in such bad shape. My wife would have to take me out of bed to take me to the bathroom. And then she would have to clean me up and then put me back in the bed. And that's the condition I was in this time last year.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
So at least it seems like you're. I mean, obviously, I'm not with you there in person, but it seems like you seem like a healthy person, or that you're on the right track. And
Yes, I'm definitely on the right track
okay,
because I didn't stay with chemo and radiation. I
right,
did alternative things, so I'm feeling better. I'm still on a lot of medication. I'm on morphine and OxyContin and gabapentin and a few other things as well.
okay.
But so they really drain me. But I'd rather be, drained than to be gone at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about what you said is, on our side, and maybe you run into this on your side as well, but when you're somebody that works in the media and you interact with fans a lot, one of the common responses or questions we get from people is, why would these people wait so long to come forward? And I think the point you made was an interesting one in that you're a younger guy. You don't really realize that anything is wrong at the time until somebody approached you about it,
Right.
years later and said, hey, that wasn't part of the protocol. I mean, how much of that do you think went into this, that the guys that you played with and the people that age didn't, they might not have liked it and it wasn't comfortable, but didn't necessarily even realize that this was sexual assault?
Right. That's exactly the case because we did not know because for the most part we didn't know because we never thought that Michigan would hire a predator as the team doctor. So we never thought that, he would be doing predatory things to us. He did worse things to some guys than others. So in my case, I find out this time last year that the physicals were inappropriate. But then, so when I found out it was inappropriate, then that's when I began to say, listen, I was supposed to have been dead 2 years ago, so I'm gonna tell it. I'm gonna tell what's going on. I'm gonna tell it. I have no shame about this because that's what kept a lot of guys quiet because they were ashamed of what happened, and that's what happened with sexual misconduct and rape and molestation is the victims don't talk about it. The victims are too ashamed to talk about it. But I wasn't ashamed to talk about it because I didn't do anything wrong. Dr. Anderson did something wrong. It wasn't me. So that's why I was able to talk about it. And I think once I started speaking out, and then some of the other guys saw that, you know, how bold I was about speaking out about it, that they, in fact, several guys called me and said, Chuck, I couldn't have done it without you. If you hadn't spoken out and hadn't been the first one to speak out and tell this, I don't know if I'd be here today telling this. But thank you. And that's what a lot of guys were telling me. Thank you for telling our story. Thank you. Thank you. And then the guys began to get more emboldened about this, about, not being ashamed, because I think a lot of the guys thought that once you put it out there that this happened, that now all of a sudden all these Michigan fans who love you and adore you are going to turn on you and just start attacking you. But honestly, that did not happen to me, and I was surprised because my son was like, Chuck, Dad, I'll take you off of Facebook if you need me to. And out of all the texts and comments I got, they were all positive, and there were people saying, we're sorry to hear about what you've been through. But nobody attacked me and said, oh, you're lying, oh, you're this, oh, you're that. I had one guy say, big as you are, you should have knocked him out.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I knock out the doctor. Now I go to jail. And now you got a whole nother situation.
Yeah, and that's pretty common. Like we see those responses often. I guess a big component of this, or has become a component of this, is the man you have in your painting behind you, Bo Schembechler.
Yeah.
I believe that maybe you've changed kind of your position on this a little bit from where you originally were, but you've seen kind of how Bo's name has been mentioned in the recent report that came out, and then obviously you have Matt Schembechler come out today, along with two other football players that claim that they approached him about this. I guess before we get into that, what was the reasoning why you wouldn't have approached a coach, an assistant coach, or anything like that once this was going on? Was it just because you didn't know anything was wrong?
I didn't know it was wrong. I
Okay,
didn't know because I never thought that Michigan would have had a predator as a doctor.
got it.
And then when I started checking with the older guys, they said, "Oh, he does it to everybody. That's part of a physical." So, oh, okay.
Okay.
It wasn't comfortable, but I figured it was just something I had to deal with to play, Big Ten football.
Sure. So, what is your stance now that you've heard Matt Schembechler speak? You've heard a couple other, football players say that they directly approached Bo Schembechler about this. I mean, where do you stand on, you know, Bo's involvement and kind of his legacy overall and where that stands?
Oh my God, things have turned 180, a complete 180, and I love Bo. You know, I got to experience things I never would have experienced. I got, to get a degree in painting, and I got to meet some of the most awesome guys in the world, on the team and the coaches and stuff, so that really meant a lot to me. And some of my fondest memories were my Michigan years. And my wife, I met her 43 years ago at Michigan. So all those good memories when I think about Michigan and Michigan football and Bo. And then all this comes out and it's just hard. It's just hard to process. But, Bo wasn't the guy I thought he was. Because in my brain, I'm thinking, Bo wouldn't let this happen to his players. If he knew that he would have stopped it. But then I'm seeing, Dan Kwiatkowski was one of my teammates,
Yeah.
and there were other things that let me know that Bo knew, and I was very disappointed. In fact, a lot of the former players called me up and they said, "Chuck, tell me that Bo didn't know." This is before it came out. Tell me that Bo didn't know. I said, and by then I had discovered that Bo did know. And I couldn't say it to him. I couldn't say that Bo knew because they was like, Bo was like a father to me, man. Tell me that Bo didn't know, because that's my safe place, was thinking that Bo didn't know, because if Bo knew, then all of this stuff that he taught us was BS. And all of the stuff that he ingrained in our brains was BS. And I didn't want to break my friend's heart by saying that Bo didn't know, but now more and more is coming out. Bo knew. Bo
Yeah. Well, given everything that's come out and your experience, you had said something to the effect of, after you got your physical and got on the practice field and were with the guys, it was talked about among the team, and some of the coaches even had it happen to them. How likely, and obviously this is just speculation, but how likely do you think it is, given how much this was common knowledge, that Bo wouldn't have known that this was a thing during that time?
He knew it was a thing,
Okay.
because everybody talked about it, and Bo knew everything that was going on. And he would laugh and joke about the fact that he knew everything. And that's why, if somebody failed a class, Bo knew. If somebody got a speeding ticket, Bo knew. If somebody got into a fight, Bo knew. Bo knew everything. And he would brag and laugh about the fact that he knew everything and that we couldn't get away with anything without him knowing. And that's, so he knew what was happening to us. But for some reason, Anderson was more important to him than the team. And that was the thing that I couldn't wrap my head around was that every year Ohio State game he would do the motivational speech, the team, the team, the team, and he would say, "No man is greater than the team. No coach is greater than the team. No player is greater than the team. Nobody is greater than the team." And then we find out all these years later that Dr. Anderson was more important than the team, and that's hard to swallow.
Yeah.
Especially seeing that he was committing crimes. And see, I know there are like 850 that are suing the university right now, but that's not saying he only molested 850. That's just how many were brave enough to come forth and say, yeah, he got me too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of guys are too ashamed to admit it. And some of the guys are just blocking it. And some guys that they know it happened to them, they say, oh, that didn't mean anything. That was nothing. That was just a premature prostate exam, things like that. And so, yeah.
So, given everything that, has come out, I think the next big question you get from, people that are on the outside looking in is what next? What can be done? And given that you are a part of this, I mean, what is it that you hope to see the University of Michigan do? I know there's a lot of talk about removing statues, renaming buildings. What in your mind is a necessary next step for the University of Michigan?
To be honest, I really don't know, because when they named the building after Bo, they never checked with me about it. When they, named the building, and they didn't check me. When they, put the statue there, they didn't check with me. So that's not, to me, the statue is not that important to me. It's the fact that this man, allowed us to be violated by a predator. And for me, the most important thing is for this not to happen to any more student athletes or students, period, or kids. Because, I think about, he was able to do this for 35, 37 years with 18 through 22-year-olds, 17 through 22-year-olds. What do you think he did to 15 to 18-year-olds in high school? And in Matt's case, 10-year-olds. This guy was sick. Yeah. And Michigan protected him. And that's what I want to see stop is, because if people realize that this is not something to be ashamed of and speak out, you can squash this a whole lot sooner. But people are so ashamed, especially males, are so ashamed to speak out about what's happened to them. They wait till they're 50, 60, 70 years old before they speak out. Now the predator is dead.
Yeah.
I just want to see people not be ashamed, and don't shame the victims. I want to say that to the public. Don't shame the victims. We're not lying. This really happened to us. We're not lying about this stuff. We're not lying about how it affected us. This stuff really happened. And the thing is, right now, the only relief we get is talking to each other. We call each other and talk to each other about this, and when ESPN did that article on me, I must have had 40 calls from different players in the first week, and the guys would call me crying on the phone. They were crying, and they didn't say, "Hi Chuck, this is so and so." They just started off crying. Grown 65-year-old men crying on the phone, all Americans crying on the phone. And then they say, "I'm sorry for crying, Chuck." I said, "What are you apologizing for? I know what you're going through because I went through it too. There's nothing to be ashamed of." And then they tell me their stories. And then so many of the guys, guys in the last year and a half, five of the guys have died because of Anderson. But nobody sees that. They talking about some damn statue. I'm talking about my friend's diet.
Yeah,
Talking
it's
about.
it's awful, and I think that's why we wanted to have you on, because I think your story and your experience is important. I think people need to hear it, and quite frankly, just given the interaction that we have with the general public, it seems like a lot of people desperately need to be educated on this topic, not only to know what signs to look for, but just to understand what it's like for somebody that goes through it and why you would wait. I mean, it's not like there is a protocol for when you're sexually assaulted where you start checking boxes off, like, okay, that happened, now I got to do this, now I got to do this, now I got to do this. Like,
Right.
there's the human element to it, and you're right, there's the shame, the embarrassment, the fear of what the blowback is going to be, particularly in a town like Ann Arbor and with a coach like Bo Schembechler, and just how big of an environment that is on a 17, 18-year-old kid. And I think that gets lost on a lot of people. And so, happy to give you this platform, happy for you to, to share your story. And I guess my question is, now what's going on with you? I mean, we've talked about, some of the things you went through, but, what's going on with you these days?
Well, I'm feeling better, because I'm taking so many drugs. I'm enjoying, I'm enjoying my grandchildren. Um, I discovered edibles. That's
There you go. You and me both.
That's funny.
and it's really brought the guys closer together, because we're all in the same boat, and now we're talking, and we're connecting with players that we haven't spoken with in 20, 30, 40 years, and that's really powerful. And but like I say, I'm not able to play basketball or anything yet, but I can shoot. I can still shoot baskets and talk trash. So trash talking is still there.
That's, those are two very important elements.
You got to talk trash.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good to hear. Brandon, I don't know. Do you have any questions before we let Chuck go?
I do. I have a couple, and they might be a little bit tough to answer. Some of it's a little hypothetical, but
Let's ask
but
it.
Chuck, you said something that I think is resonating with a lot of people, former players and fans. You said, I loved Bo. And I think a lot of people feel that way because they didn't know that any of this was going on at the time. And, so many are still in disbelief. And a lot of fans, I mean, I've seen it all over social media and all over these different discussions where people are saying, well, this is very convenient. No, Bo's dead. He can't defend himself. I wonder where you are on that, and that you did love this guy. You called him a father figure when you were at Michigan, and I'm sure you have hundreds of amazing memories of being around him and being a Michigan football player. But he's not around to defend himself. But I wonder if that even matters now at this point, knowing what you know and how it's transpired over the last couple of years here.
No, it doesn't matter, because I think for me, I realized that Bo really cared about winning. And that was the most important thing to him, was winning. And I've seen his temper. So when Matt mentioned, getting drilled in the chest with a punch, I've seen Bo do things like that to people. So, and winning was the most important thing in the world to him. And I remember he used to say, I am Michigan football. And that's what he was. He had an ego like you wouldn't believe. I guess, to coach at that level, you got to have an ego.
Yeah.
But he said that. He said, I am Michigan football. I've seen him push the trainer down on his head at the Rose Bowl. And I'm like, did he just do what I think he did? Because the trainer wanted to hold a player out, because, see, Bo, at the Rose Bowl, Bo had the team hitting twice a day, like, at the Rose Bowl. Now USC and Washington, they weren't hitting. We were hitting twice a day going up to that point because Bo wanted to win so badly. And then when a player got hurt, the trainer tried to keep him off the field. And Bo went over to the trainer and pushed him over on his head, and his hat popped off. And he said, "Get him out here right now." And the trainer went and got him and brought him out there. So the trainer tried to stand up for the player, and Bo lost it, just pushed him down. And I've heard Bo say some nasty things to people, and which is really, and I would have normally said this, but after I see what that he could have stopped this for us himself, and that he knew this, I'm not going to try to protect him any longer. I'm going to just tell the truth. He was an egomaniac, and all he cared about was winning, and he didn't care who he hurt to win. So that's how I feel about it, I guess.
And I had another one, and then we can probably let you go, Chris, if you have anything else. But you've got the picture behind you of Bo and Jim Harbaugh. This thing's not about Jim Harbaugh. And there were some things at the press conference today where some people clearly had an agenda, and they were trying to pull Jim Harbaugh into this any way that they could. But I think you could make an argument that he's one of the most famous Bo disciples. He loves Bo. He's got the Bo quotes all over the place, and the picture that you see behind you, he's got that photo hanging up in his office. I just wonder if you think it's fair, I guess, first of all, that people want to bring him into this, because it's not about that. It's about the victims, and it's about getting them to a place where they can feel good again. But he's the current head coach of Michigan. He did play for Bo. He was one of Bo's most famous players, and he champions a lot of things just like Bo. A lot of the things he says are like Bo. The way he looks in some cases is like Bo. I just wonder, if it's fair to bring him into this, or where you kind of stand on, what he should say or shouldn't say at this point moving forward. Because on Thursday he had some things to say about Bo that didn't land very well. It seemed to be pretty tone deaf in terms of what the victims were going through. But you also said some of those same things, that you love Bo and that you have a lot of great memories about him, and that seems to be the only thing he's focusing on right now. I just wonder, is it fair to bring him in? Should he say more? Should he say less? Like, where do you fall on what's going on with the current team and Jim Harbaugh?
Honestly, I think it's not fair to pull him into this. I don't think that, when I was playing for Bo, Jim Harbaugh was just a snotty-nosed kid running around the field, and I would play catch with him from time to time. And he met my son in another country, and he said, "I remember your dad. Your dad was one of the nice ones. He would play catch with me when I was a little boy." And so, I think Jim's a good guy, and this I don't think that if Jim had been back then, he would allow this to happen. I don't think so. And I don't think that it's fair to put him in this box with Bo. But I because this wasn't the mess that Harbaugh made.
Right.
Harbaugh's making his own messes. But
that's another topic.
That's another
right?
episode.
That's another episode. Yeah.
That's great. That's good.
Let him speak for his own message. But this one is not one of his. And naturally, as a Bo disciple, he's gonna do what he can to protect him right to the end. And he's a loyal guy. But by the same token, I'm sure he had teammates that were violated by Anderson. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was violated. I'm not saying he did, but there were a lot of guys violated by Anderson. And the odds are, if you played football for Michigan, you got violated by Anderson. And that's why I say hail to the victims.
Yeah.
Hail to the victims.
Absolutely. I wanted to throw this comment up, Chris. Your wife is watching and chimed in, and I think she kind of is echoing everything that we're saying. So it's heartbreaking. Chuck, thank you for sharing your story, opening the door for more people to share theirs and begin the healing process. And that is what it's about. Like I said, I mean, people who are trying to use this platform to somehow pull Jim Harbaugh into it because they. I mean, look, I've been very open. I don't think he's doing a good job at Michigan. I was ready for him to be gone last year, but this is not that. This is not the platform to try to chalk up another reason of why to get rid of him. And so I think I don't like anybody who's going that route. But as someone who played a little bit before him, and you mentioned some of his teammates, one of them spoke today. Giovanni Johnson was there the exact same time that Jim Harbaugh was, from 82 to 86. So we know what was going on. We know what was going on. So again, thank you, Chuck. Chris, you too, man, for setting this up. This was awesome.
And one more thing too, if you are really a Michigan fan, don't discount what we're saying. Don't hurt us by saying, "Oh no, they're lying on Michigan. They're just trying to get a payday. They're lying on Michigan. They're lying on Bo. They're lying on Bo. Bo never would have done." You don't know Bo. We played for this man for 4 and 5 years. So don't assume that we're lying. Assume that we're telling the truth, because we are. And see, I don't think it was 850 players that were molested by Anderson. I think it was closer to 2,000. That's what I think. Because guys are ashamed to come out.
37 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
Brandon and I have talked about that usually when things like this happen, if 800 people came forward, it's safe to assume that at least 800 people didn't, right? And that's, I think overall where I'm at with this, and Chuck, I had mentioned a little bit about, that this is a bit of a personal topic for me, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, and just to, kind of put it out there, and my hope is that, this is an important story that needs to be told. Everybody who went through this needs to have their story told. And my hope is just that, to your point, I just want people to listen to what you guys have to say. I don't, obviously Bo Schembechler is a huge part of Michigan football history, but it just, to me, it doesn't seem like this is something that anybody would want to be a part of had they not gone through it. Right? Mm-hmm. People aren't rushing to go out and claim that they were victims of sexual assault, especially, young males or males who were athletes. It just, it seems like it just doesn't really add up. And so my hope is that people listen to what you guys have to say. I think it's an important story that needs to be told. We'll obviously see what Michigan does with it in the coming days and weeks. But, Michigan is going to have to act on this. They're going to have to do something meaningful. And I hope that whatever it is, you guys find peace with that.
And one more thing. I was reading comments from the press conference earlier, and people were just attacking Matt left and right.
Yeah.
It's like, and they're critiquing every aspect of his life because he spoke out.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't speak out, because of that kind of stuff. And if your dad knew that you got molested by his friend and he didn't do anything about it, that would cause a rift in the family. Anybody's family.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on the man. You don't know what it's like to be the son of one of the greatest coaches in history who was allowing you to be molested. That's a lot to take. Mm-hmm. And that will make you have anger for your dad. I understand it. So please, when you're making those comments, don't be so vicious. We all have feelings, so don't do that to us, guys.
Yeah, well said, and I can't think of anything else to add. I mean, I think a little bit of humanity goes a long way, and I think people should just listen to what you guys have to say. So,
good stuff. Thank you so much, Chuck, for your time, man. That was,
I
mean, there was a little bit of everything in there, man. I mean, some.
You know what? We're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to have you back on though, just to talk about actual Michigan football as we get closer to the season, because there's plenty to talk about there on that front, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that as well.
Hey, Chuck,
but now it doesn't seem like the time.
too. We'll talk about artwork too.
Yeah,
Yes,
three
yes,
artists right
absolutely.
here, man. I'm
There we
an
go,
artist
yeah.
as well, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool that you guys connected that way. I know I was thinking that too, Chris. Like we didn't prompt Chuck back there to say Harbaugh has his own problems going on. That was all.
We did not.
That was
That was
all.
not
That was
us.
all him. That was all
Right.
him. No, so that's funny, man. So I would love it. Anytime we can, we'll do it. So,
And
Chuck,
you
thank
can
you.
use that quote whenever you want.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chuck. I really appreciate it, man.
All right. Hail to
Awesome.
the hail
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Chuck.
All right.